He came to this town to retire in peace, until the forest sent his dog a message. A veteran Navy SEAL and his German Shepherd canine, Rook, two retired warriors who weren't supposed to chase anything anymore. Then Rook stopped mid-stride, ears up, body locked, like he'd just heard someone call from inside metal. Not a scream, not a voice. A signal, steady, impossible, still alive, buried where nothing should be alive. An abandoned spaceship sat out there, half swallowed by moss, and the wind made it breathe like a sleeping beast. And when the sunlight hit the hull, the warning appeared. Don't come back. But the truth doesn't ask permission. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below and hit like plus subscribe to K9 Navy SEAL Stories. Northern Light came clean and honey gold, the kind that made a cold lake look warm from a distance. It spilled over pine needles and granite boulders, and the small town perched beside the water, like it had been placed there on purpose. One careful hand, one quiet prayer. Cole Mercer drove in without ceremony. He was 43, 6'1", broad-shouldered in that unshowy way that said the strength had been earned and kept, not performed. His face was all angles, strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, softened only by a rough beard that never fully committed to either scruff or a proper shave. His eyes were a deep gray blue, the color of winter sky just before snow, and they looked like they'd spent years learning how far away danger could be and still matter. His skin carried the bronze of long sun exposure, and at his temples the first streaks of silver had arrived early, like frost that didn't ask permission. He wore the same outfit he always wore now, as if changing clothes might invite change he didn't trust. An olive field jacket with worn elbows, dark green cargo pants, and a red and deep blue plaid flannel under the jacket. Brown leather boots scuffed at the toes. A battered military watch on his wrist. A pocket knife he barely touched but never left behind. On his back, an Eberly stock half-track pack, heavy enough to feel like a promise. In the passenger seat sat his second shadow. Rook was a German Shepherd, black and tan, short-coated, thick and healthy, built like a machine that had learned gentleness. He wasn't oversized. He was balanced, muscle tidy, movement economical, the posture of a dog trained to wait and then explode into action only when it mattered. His eyes were dark and intelligent, always scanning, always reading. The tactical harness on his back, black olive with a firm top handle, made him look like what he had been. K9, service, purpose. A small metal tag near his chest read Rook and caught the sunlight when he breathed. Rook didn't pant like a happy pet on vacation. He breathed like a working dog at rest, quiet, controlled, always ready to turn air into decisions. Cole had told himself he came to this place to be ordinary. A job, a cabin rental, trails to patrol, people to nod at, silence to earn. He had done the loud life already. He had paid for it with pieces of himself he couldn't name without tasting metal. The ranger station was a low building with a flagpole out front and a parking lot full of trucks that looked older than their owners. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and damp maps. The man who greeted him was Ranger Tom Ridley. Late 50s, compact and tough as a knot in a tree trunk. His hair was iron gray, cut short, and his face wore the weathered calm of someone who'd spent more time outdoors than in front of mirrors. He had the kind of steady eyes that noticed everything without accusing it. When he shook Cole's hand, it was firm but not challenging. "Mercer," Tom said, voice gravel soft. "You're early." Cole nodded. "Couldn't sleep." Tom didn't press. That was his first kindness. "We'll start you with trail checks and a few routine calls. Folks get lost. Folks get stupid. Sometimes both." Cole's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Almost permission for humor. "I've met both." Tom glanced at Rook. "And that's your partner?" "Was," Cole corrected quietly. Then, after a beat, "Still is." Rook sat without being told, spine straight, eyes on Tom's hands. Not aggressive, not friendly, just evaluating. Tom's lips lifted in a brief, approving curve. "Good dog." Rook blinked once, slow. Cole swore the dog looked insulted by the simplicity of the compliment. Outside, the town moved at a pace that felt like it belonged to another century. People waved. People stared. A few glanced at the harness and looked away quickly, as if the sight of a working dog reminded them of things they'd rather call elsewhere. Cole walked to his truck with a folded schedule and a set of keys. He told himself it was enough. But the body keeps its own calendar. By late afternoon, the wind had sharpened. The lake glittered like broken glass, and the pines murmured in a language older than English. Cole drove to the only diner still open past 6 because he didn't trust himself to eat alone in the cabin yet. Solitude wasn't peace for him. It was an echo chamber. The diner was warm, bright, and stubbornly cheerful. A bell over the door chimed as he entered. Rook followed at heel. The woman behind the counter looked up. Maggie Sloan, mid-40s, tall and lean, with sandy blonde hair twisted into a messy bun that could have been fashionable if she cared. Her skin was fair but freckled. Her expression a practiced blend of friendliness and unimpressed realism. The kind of person who had heard every small-town story and learned to keep her heart in a locked drawer until someone earned the key. Her gaze slid to Rook's harness and tag, then to Cole's boots, then to Cole's eyes. "Well," she said, not smiling yet, "you're either lost or looking for trouble." Cole took a booth near the window. "Coffee." Maggie set a mug down like a gavel. "And for the officer?" she asked, nodding toward Rook. Rook sat beside the booth, posture perfect. He leaned forward, sniffed the air with slow precision, then turned his head toward the counter display where a platter of sausages rested. His expression, if a dog could have one, was deeply judgmental. Maggie barked a laugh before she could stop herself. "Did your dog just disapprove of my sausages?" Cole's lips finally lifted. A small thing, a rare thing. He has standards. Rook glanced at Cole as if to say, "Don't blame me, blame the evidence." A couple at the far table chuckled. Even the cook in the back made a sound like amusement. For a moment, the room felt normal. Warmth, laughter, the smell of fried onions. Cole let it touch him like sunlight through glass. Something he could see, not something he could hold. Then the bell over the door chimed again, and a young man in a flannel jacket stepped in, cheeks red from cold. He paused when he saw Cole and Rook. He stared one beat too long and then looked away, as if he'd accidentally made eye contact with a scar. Cole's smile faded. The old instinct returned. Scan exits, track hands, measure distance. He hated it. He couldn't stop it. Maggie poured the coffee without asking questions. "You knew?" she asked softly. "The way you ask a person you suspect is carrying something heavy." Cole nodded. "For now." "And him?" She nodded at Rook. Cole's hand rested on the table, near his watch, thumb rubbing the worn edge of it once. "Retired K9. Maggie's expression shifted. A little respect, a little sorrow. "Retired doesn't mean done, does it?" Cole didn't answer. Rook's ears flicked, as if the dog understood the question. Had teeth. Cole ate, paid, left a tip bigger than necessary. Maggie watched him go with the quiet focus of someone who knew how loneliness looked when it wore a man's face. Night arrived early, as it did up here. The cabin Cole had rented sat at the edge of the trees, simple and clean, with a porch that faced the lake. Inside, the air was cold until the heater caught. Cole unpacked with military efficiency, putting each item where his hands would find it in the dark. Rook lay near the door, head on paws, eyes half closed, but not sleeping. A dog like that didn't sleep the way pets did. He patrolled even with his dreams. Cole tried to sleep anyway. He closed his eyes, and his mind did what it always did when he asked for rest. It played old footage. A hallway, a shout, the weight of a decision, the taste of dust and copper. His heart sped up for no reason the present could explain. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. The heater ticked. The forest outside exhaled. Then came the sound. Not loud, not dramatic, a low, drawn-out hum that seemed to press against the cabin walls as if the night itself had leaned in. Cole's first thought was, tinnitus, old damage, old ghosts. But Rook's head snapped up. His ears lifted, pointed toward the trees like compass needles finding north. His body rose in one smooth motion, no hesitation, no confusion, only certainty. The dog's gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the window, and the muscles along his back tightened as if something had spoken in a frequency only he could hear. Cole sat up. "Rook?" The dog didn't look at him. He moved to the door, paused, then turned his head once, an unmistakable gesture. "Come." Cole's throat went dry. "It's the wind," he murmured, not believing himself. Rook's gaze held him, not pleading, not demanding, just sure. Cole pulled on his boots and jacket. The military watch felt cold against his wrist. He clipped a leash to Rook's harness more out of habit than need. Outside, the air was sharp enough to wake anyone. Stars glittered like spilled salt. The forest stood tall and black, a cathedral of pine trunks and quiet. The hum came again, lower now, like a giant far away breathing through metal ribs. Rook led him into the trees. Cole followed, cursing himself for it, grateful for it, afraid of it. About a quarter-mile in, Rook stopped dead. Not a nervous pause, a full stop, like a door had closed in his mind. He lowered his head, sniffed once, then lifted his nose to the air and held it there, still as a statue. His tail didn't wag. His eyes narrowed. Cole crouched beside him, scanning the ground with a flashlight. There were footprints. Not animal prints. Human. Fresh enough that the edges still looked soft in the damp needle bed. Cole's pulse thudded. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. He hadn't even admitted to himself that he was going anywhere. Rook let out a quiet, controlled growl. Not at the forest in general, but at a specific direction, as if he could point at the exact spot where someone had been holding their breath. Cole whispered, "We're not alone." The dog looked at him then, just once. And in that look was something that felt like judgment and warning and loyalty braided together. Then Rook moved again, faster now, pulling Cole deeper into the trees. The hum returned, stronger, and with it a strange sensation in Cole's bones, like pressure before a storm. Dawn came pale and slow. Somehow Cole and Rook ended up at the boundary marked by an old sign that read, "Hazard Zone" in fading red letters. The air smelled of wet moss and iron. And there it was, the ship. It lay half swallowed by the forest, tilted on its side like a fallen star, trying to become a hill. Its outer skin was streaked with rust and cloaked in thick green moss, vines draping it as if the woods had dressed it for a funeral. In the early light, the curved hull looked like the spine of a metal whale, ancient, stranded, mythic. Cole stood very still. He had seen wreckage before. He had seen machines broken by violence and fate. But this felt different. This wasn't just a thing that had crashed. This was a thing that the forest had adopted. Rook approached the hull with cautious confidence, sniffing along the seam where metal met moss. He wasn't afraid. He was focused. The way he looked when he worked. the way he looked when he knew his purpose. Cole stepped closer, his boots sinking slightly into the spongy ground. The hum was gone now, replaced by a silence so deep it felt deliberate. As the sun lifted higher, a thin beam of light slid across the hull. Moss shimmered. Rust glowed. And letters appeared. Not painted, not fresh. Carved long ago, then hidden by time. The sunlight revealed them like a secret that had been waiting for the right hour. Don't come back. Cole stared at the words until they blurred. His chest tightened. Not because of fear, but because of recognition. The message wasn't for tourists. It wasn't for hunters. It wasn't even for the town. It felt like it had been written for a man who had tried, for years, not to return to anything that hurt. Cole's thumb found the edge of his watch again. Rubbing. An old habit from old nights. Rook moved to a narrow, shadowed gap in the hull where vines had parted. He stopped and planted his feet, posture rigid. His ears tilted forward, his eyes locked on the darkness inside. The dog's throat vibrated with a low growl, small but unmistakable. Cole followed Rook's gaze into the black opening. The air that drifted out smelled of damp metal and earth, and something faintly human. Rook didn't bark, he didn't lunge. He simply stood guard at the threshold like a sentry at a door that should never open. And in that quiet, Cole realized the worst part. Rook wasn't warning him about the ship. Rook was warning him about someone, or something, inside it, holding its breath and waiting. Morning settled over the forest like a held breath finally released. Mist rose from the mossy ground in thin ribbons, and the lake beyond the trees reflected a pale, uncertain sky. Cole Mercer stood just outside the shadow of the ship, his boots planted wide, shoulders squared, not in aggression, but in habit. The words carved into the hull still echoed in his head, not as sound, but as pressure, like a thought he hadn't chosen. Rook remained at the threshold, body angled slightly forward, ears high. He was no longer growling. Instead, he had entered a quieter mode, focused, professional, the way he used to look when a situation stopped being strange and started being work. Cole exhaled slowly. Okay, he murmured, more to himself than the dog. Let's do this right. They didn't go inside. Not yet. Cole had learned the hard way that rushing into unknown structures, especially ones that felt wrong, was how people got hurt. He took a step back, scanning the area. Ground sloped unevenly, softened by years of fallen needles and damp decay. The air smelled of wet iron and pine sap. That was when he heard the engine. A low, steady hum cut through the quiet, growing louder as it approached along the gravel service road that skirted the forest. A dark green pickup came into view, its tires crunching to a stop a careful distance away. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. Avery Dunn moved like someone who trusted her balance. She was in her mid-30s, tall and athletic, with the lean strength of someone who spent more time hiking than sitting. Her brown hair was pulled into a practical low ponytail, strands already slipping free in the morning damp. She wore a ranger's jacket layered over a thermal shirt, cargo pants tucked into scuffed boots, and a radio clipped to her shoulder. Her face was sharp in a friendly way. High cheekbones, straight nose, expressive eyebrows that seemed permanently poised to question authority. When she smiled, it was quick and crooked, as if humor were a tool she kept ready. Her eyes flicked from Cole to the ship, then to Rook. Well, she said, voice dry. That's not on the tourist map. Cole straightened. You're early. Avery shrugged. I get alerts when someone wanders into a restricted zone with a dog that looks like he could arrest me. She nodded at Rook. SAR flagged your GPS ping. Cole nodded once. Hazard zone signs were faded. They always are, Avery replied. Keeps people curious. Her gaze sharpened as she looked at the hull. You find this? Or did it find you? Before Cole could answer, another vehicle pulled up. Older, dust-coated, with antennas bolted awkwardly to the roof. Dr. Lila Hart emerged like she'd been dropped into the wrong century. She was in her early 40s, slender, with pale skin that had seen more screens than sun. Her dark hair was cut blunt at the shoulders, streaked with silver that didn't look like age so much as defiance. She wore wire-frame glasses and a heavy parka that swallowed her frame, its pockets bulging with cables, sensors, and notebooks. Fingerless gloves exposed hands marked by ink stains and faint burns. Lila's eyes didn't linger on Cole or Avery. They went straight to the ship. Oh, she breathed. It's bigger than I thought. Avery tilted her head. You're the scientist? Astrophysicist, Lila corrected absently. Technically, but today, I'm more interested in acoustics. She set down a compact case and began unpacking equipment with quick, precise movements. Handheld sensors, a tablet, a coiled wire with small contact microphones. Cole watched her with the quiet attention of someone assessing a specialist in the field. You've been here before? Lila smiled faintly. Not inside. I don't trespass. She paused, then added, often. Rook took a step toward her equipment and stopped, head cocked. His ears flicked as if catching something faint. Lila noticed. Her smile widened. He hears it, doesn't he? Cole glanced at Rook. Hears what? Instead of answering, Lila pressed a sensor flat against the ship's hull. The metal responded with a dull, almost imperceptible vibration. She adjusted a dial. The tablet screen bloomed with waves. There, she said. That. Avery leaned in. Looks like static? Low-frequency resonance, Lila replied. Infrasound. Wind passes through the ship's internal structure, broken ribs, curved panels, and it turns the whole thing into a kind of lung. She tapped the screen. It doesn't howl, it breathes. Cole frowned. I felt something last night. Pressure. Exactly, Lila said. Humans perceive it as unease, nausea, sometimes headaches. Dogs hear it as rhythm, pattern. She glanced at Rook. To him, it's knocking. Rook shifted his weight, tail still. He looked from the hull to Cole, then back again, Avery, let out a low whistle. So the forest isn't haunted. It's ventilated. Lila snorted. Tell that to the folklore. Cole studied the ship with new eyes. The fear he'd felt didn't fade, but it sharpened, focused into something more dangerous, understanding. They circled the hull carefully. Moss clung thickest along a seam that ran diagonally across the ship's side. Rook followed the line, nose close to the metal, breathing in short, deliberate bursts. Then, he stopped. He raised one paw and pressed it against a recessed panel. The panel clicked. Avery stiffened. Did your dog just... The panel slid open with a soft mechanical sigh, revealing a narrow compartment filled with wiring and a compact device mounted securely inside. Lila crouched, eyes alight. That's not original. Cole leaned closer. What is it? A signal transmitter, Lila said. Modern, maintained. Avery's jaw tightened. So someone's been back. Rook stepped aside, allowing Cole room, but he didn't relax. His body remained tense as if he expected the compartment to bite. Avery scanned the surrounding trees. If someone's servicing this, they're careful. She stepped away from the hull and moved uphill, eyes tracking the canopy. After a moment, she stopped and reached up. There, she said. A small trail camera was strapped to a pine trunk, its lens angled directly at the ship's entrance. The casing was weathered, but the mount was recent. "They're watching," Avery said. Cole didn't respond. He was staring at the transmitter, at the neatness of it, the intention. This wasn't vandalism. It wasn't curiosity. It was purpose. Avery removed the camera and handed it to Lila, who popped out the memory card and slid it into her tablet. Video files bloomed onto the screen. They watched in silence. Clips of the forest, the ship, weather rolling in and out. And then Cole, walking the trails, parking at the ranger station, entering the diner with Rook at his side. Cole felt something cold slide down his spine. The final clip froze on his face as he stepped out of his truck that very first morning. White text appeared over the image. "Bravo Lock needs you." Cole's breath caught. Avery looked at him sharply. "You know what that means." Cole nodded once. His voice was flat. "It's a designation, not public, not casual." Lila's fingers hovered over the screen. "Military?" "Sort of," Cole said. "Variant, used for compartmentalized operations, clean exits." Avery swallowed. "Clean for who?" Cole didn't answer. As if in response, the transmitter's indicator light flickered. Once, twice. Rook's ears snapped forward. He took a single step back, placing his body between Cole and the open compartment. His gaze fixed on the blinking light, unblinking, resolute. The device emitted a low pulse, not sound, but vibration. Cole felt it in his chest. Like a distant drum, Lila whispered, "It shouldn't be doing that." The light brightened, and then stopped. Silence rushed back in, heavier than before. Avery broke it. "We need to report this." Cole's jaw tightened. "To who?" She hesitated. "Sheriff, federal liaison, someone." Lila closed the compartment carefully. "Whoever set this up will know we were here. The camera's gone." Rook remained vigilant, eyes scanning the trees as if expecting an answer from the forest. Cole straightened, pulling his jacket tighter around himself. The ship no longer felt like a relic. It felt like a message. And messages, he knew, always came with consequences. He looked once more at the words carved into the hull, half hidden now as the sun shifted. "Don't come back." Cole turned away, already knowing he would. The town looked harmless in daylight. Wooden storefronts lined the main street, their windows filled with fishing gear, postcards of the lake, and faded photos of high school teams that had once been champions of something that mattered deeply, briefly. Pickup trucks rolled past at an unhurried pace. People waved because that was what people did here. Not because they wanted to know you, but because they wanted things to stay smooth. Cole Mercer noticed all of it. He noticed how conversations paused when he entered a room, how eyes drifted, then returned, measuring the shape of him, the harness on Rook, the quiet weight he carried. This town didn't fear strangers. It feared disruption. The sheriff's office sat at the corner of Main and Cedar, a squat brick building that looked more like a courthouse that had given up on ambition. Cole stepped inside with Avery at his side. Rook moving in perfect heel, nails clicking softly on the tile. Sheriff Hank Barlow stood behind his desk, arms crossed. Hank was a big man, thick through the chest and neck. His bulk earned more from years behind a desk than from work in the field. His face was ruddy, his jaw square, his hair a thinning gray, cut too short in an effort to appear tougher than time allowed. A mustache sat heavy on his upper lip, hiding expressions he had learned to suppress. His eyes were tired, not cowardly, but worn by decades of responsibility he no longer believed he could set down. He looked at Cole the way a man looks at a storm cloud he hopes will pass. "I heard you went sightseeing," Hank said. Avery leaned against the wall, arms folded. "We investigated a structure inside the hazard zone," Hank's jaw tightened. That area is restricted for a reason. Which reason? Avery asked calmly. The landslide risk? The supposed metal toxicity? Or the paperwork that hasn't been updated in 20 years? Hank slammed a hand onto the desk. Not hard, but loud enough to assert ownership of the room. All of it. Rook sat. Not because he was told to, but because something in Hank's voice had shifted. The dog's ears tilted slightly forward, eyes tracking the sheriff's hands, his breathing controlled. He wasn't threatening. He was prepared. Cole spoke for the first time. There's active equipment in there. Hank's eyes flickered, just for a fraction of a second. That's not possible, the sheriff said. It is, Cole replied, and someone's maintaining it. Silence settled like dust. Hank exhaled through his nose. I don't care what you think you found. You stay out of that zone. That's an order. Cole held his gaze. On whose authority? Mine. Avery straightened. Cole is a civilian consultant attached to SAR. I operate under state jurisdiction. You don't get to shut this down without documentation. Hank looked between them, then past them, as if hoping someone else would intervene. No one did. I'm trying to protect this town, he said finally. You start poking around old wounds. You don't know what bleeds. Cole thought of the transmitter, the camera. The message meant only for him. Some wounds don't stop bleeding just because you cover them, Cole said quietly. Hank's shoulders sagged a fraction. Stay out of the zone, he repeated. That's my final word. Outside, the air felt colder. Avery muttered. He's scared. Of what? Cole asked. Of losing control. They crossed the street to a coffee shop, more for cover than caffeine. Inside, a young woman sat alone at a corner table, pretending very hard to read her phone. She looked up as Avery entered. Nora, Avery said gently. Deputy Nora Pike swallowed and stood. Nora was in her early 30s, slim, with dark hair pulled back into a tight braid that spoke of discipline learned young. Her face was soft but serious, with wide brown eyes that carried the permanent tension of someone raised to please two opposing sides. She wore her uniform neatly, as if order might protect her from consequences. I shouldn't be seen talking to you, Nora said. Avery nodded. You shouldn't. They sat anyway. Nora's gaze flicked to Cole, then to Rook. Her eyes lingered on the dog's harness. You're the K9 guy, she said. Former, Cole replied. Rook looked at her and then away, uninterested. That somehow made Nora more nervous. She slid a manila folder across the table with fingers that trembled just enough to be noticed. This was sealed before I was hired, Nora said, but I found a reference in an old index. I shouldn't have looked. Avery opened the folder. Inside were yellowed reports, blacked out names, and a single photograph. A boy of about 10, thin, wide-eyed, standing by the lake with his arm around a dog that looked too young to understand loyalty yet. Cole felt a dull ache behind his ribs. Missing child? Avery asked. Nora nodded. 23 years ago. Case closed in less than a week. No body, no search expansion. Why? Cole asked. Nora hesitated. Funding pressure, liability, and... She swallowed. Calder Pike. The name landed like a stone dropped into water. Calder Pike arrived that afternoon in a black SUV that gleamed like it had never known dirt. He stepped out wearing a tailored coat, dark slacks, and polished shoes that didn't belong on gravel roads. He was in his late 50s, tall, with silver hair combed back neatly, and a face sculpted by confidence. His smile was practiced, warm, and entirely optional. People greeted him by name as he passed, some with gratitude, some with deference. Calder found Cole near the dock. I hear you're stirring things up, Calder said pleasantly. Cole studied him. Depends who's talking. Calder laughed softly. I prefer quiet solutions. So do I, Cole said. When they're honest. Calder's eyes flicked to Rook. Fine, animal. Rook didn't move. Calder continued. This town survives because people know when to let the past rest. Does it? Cole asked. Or does it survive because people with power decide what's remembered? Calder's smile thinned. Be careful. You're new here. Cole met his gaze. That's why I'm not used to looking away yet. Calder left without another word. That evening, Lila spread her equipment across the table in her cabin, cables snaking between mugs and notebooks. Her brow was furrowed, glasses perched low on her nose. The signal isn't a distress call, she said. It's structured, repetitive, almost like a loop. Say it, Avery urged. Lila looked up. It's asking a question. Cole felt the room tighten around him. What question? He asked. Lila turned the screen so they could all see. Who left the boy? Rook's ears lifted. His head turned toward the lake. Before anyone could speak, a sharp, single blast cut through the air outside. A horn. Short. Deliberate. Not a boat signaling danger, but a signal between people who knew what they were listening for. Rook rose instantly, posture shifting from calm to alert in one smooth motion. His gaze locked onto the darkness beyond the window, body angled as if drawing an invisible line toward the sound. Cole stood, heart pounding. Someone was coordinating, and the town, he realized, had chosen to stay quiet a long time ago. The missing call came in just after noon. Cole Mercer was tightening the straps on his pack when the ranger station radio crackled to life, voices overlapping in a way that meant panic hadn't yet found its rhythm. But it was close. A child, male, 9 years old. Last seen near the south trailhead by the lake. Milo Harper. The name meant nothing to Cole at first. Names often didn't, until they did. Avery Dunn stood near the window, already pulling on her jacket. Her expression had shifted into the clean, focused stillness she wore when the stakes turned human. He was playing with a dog, she said. A little mutt from the campground. Took off after it. Cole's jaw tightened. Children followed animals the way hope followed light, without thinking about distance. Rook rose from his spot by the door before anyone said his name. His posture changed in an instant. Gone was the relaxed watchfulness of a retired K-9. In its place stood the precise geometry of training. Head level, spine straight, eyes alert but calm. He was 8 years old now, no longer young for a working shepherd. But his body still held the memory of every command ever given, every life ever searched for. Cole clipped the leash to Rook's harness, then stopped. No, he said quietly, unclipping it again. Free work. Avery nodded once. She understood. Outside, Sheriff Hank Barlow was already coordinating search teams, his voice sharp, clipped, broadcast ready. He looked at Cole and Rook with something like relief, and something like fear. We follow procedure, Hank said. Grid search. No one enters the hazard zone. Too many risks. Landslide areas, old debris, unknown contaminants. Avery stepped forward. With respect, Sheriff, scent work doesn't follow grids. Hank shook his head. We don't complicate things. Cole met his gaze. We complicate them when we ignore the dog. For a moment, it looked like Hank might argue. Then, a mother's scream cut through the air near the lake, raw and uncontained. Hank swallowed. 30 minutes, he said stiffly. You stay clear of the zone. Cole didn't answer. Rook lowered his nose to the ground at the trailhead, breathing in shallow bursts. Cole watched the dog's shoulders, the minute shifts of weight that meant something was resolving in that precise, canine way humans couldn't imitate. Rook turned sharply left, away from the marked path, toward the trees that thickened and darkened as they led closer to the restricted area. Avery glanced at Cole. Radio or dog? Cole didn't hesitate. Dog. They moved. Rook led them off the trail into a shallow ravine where the ground softened and the smell of water rose like a memory. Cole recognized the pattern immediately, not magic, not instinct alone, but data. Fabric fibers from a jacket, damp earth from a child's boots, the faint metallic tang carried on air currents drifting down from the ship's direction. The dog's tail stiffened, not wagging, not tucked, just aligned. "He's got a track," Avery said, breath quickening as she followed. They moved fast but controlled. Cole kept his eyes wide, reading branches snapped low, the scuff of small shoes in mud. The trail bent toward the creek that fed into the lake, water moving slow and brown over stones slick with algae. Then it happened. Rook stopped. Not the purposeful halt of confirmation, but hesitation, a fraction too long. He lifted his head, sniffed the air, then swung it back toward the water. His ears twitched, uncertain. Cole's heart stuttered. 20 seconds. That was all it took for a search to go wrong. Someone had tampered with the trail. A sharp, unfamiliar scent hung low near the creek. Pungent, biting, wrong. Not natural rot or animal musk. Something placed deliberately to fracture the signal, to confuse a mound trained to trust patterns. Rook stepped left, then right. His breathing quickened. Cole dropped to one knee beside him. "Easy," he murmured, voice steady, anchoring. "Think it through." Rook shook his head once, a quick, irritated motion, and lowered his nose again, forcing himself back into the work. He took 3 steps upstream, then froze. Cole's chest tightened. Rook lifted his head, eyes narrowing, then did something unexpected. He turned away from the creek entirely and moved uphill, back toward the smell of iron and damp moss that Cole had begun to associate with the ship. "There," Avery whispered. "He's correcting." The dog wasn't following the strongest scent anymore. He was following the most honest one. 20 seconds lost. 20 seconds found. They broke into a jog, then a run. As they crested the rise, Rook suddenly slowed. Not from confusion, but calculation. He stopped beside a young birch, lifted his head, and stared into the woods ahead. Cole followed his gaze. A small red jacket lay snagged on a low branch, fluttering faintly in the breeze. Clean, too deliberate. Rook didn't bark. He didn't approach. He stood perfectly still, ears forward, eyes sharp. Not at the jacket, but beyond it. Cole's stomach dropped. "This isn't where he fell," Cole said softly. "This is where someone wanted us to stop." Rook took 1 step past the jacket, dismissing it completely, and pressed on. Trust restored. They found Milo near the outer rim of the hazard zone, sitting on a rock with his knees drawn to his chest, hands scraped raw. His face was pale beneath freckles, his brown hair matted with sweat and leaves. Tears had dried into faint white tracks on his cheeks. He looked up when he heard them, eyes widening. "I didn't mean to," he said quickly, voice cracking. "I just wanted to see where the dog went." Avery crouched, her tone gentle. "You didn't do anything wrong." Rook approached slowly, lowering himself to Milo's level. The boy reached out without being told and buried his fingers into the thick fur at Rook's neck. The dog held still, grounding. Cole scanned the area. They were closer to the ship than he liked, close enough to feel the air grow heavier, cooler, close enough that the hum was almost a vibration beneath his boots. Milo looked up at him. "Mister?" "Yeah," Cole said. There's something in the metal, Milo whispered. It makes noise when the wind blows, like someone tapping from inside. Cole's gaze flicked to the trees. Did you see anyone? Avery asked. Milo shook his head. No, but I heard footsteps, and then the noise stopped, like it didn't want me to hear it anymore. Avery and Cole exchanged a look. As Cole knelt to help Milo stand, his eyes caught something glinting in the dirt near the boy's shoe. A sliver of metal, clean edges, deliberate shape. He picked it up carefully. Etched into its surface were 2 words: Bravo Lock. Cole's breath left him. Where did you get this? He asked. Milo shrugged. It was just there, by the rock. Cole opened his mouth to speak. Some explanation, some lie, gentle enough for a child. And then, click. A sharp, mechanical sound echoed faintly from deeper within the trees, metallic and final, like a latch engaging. Rook stiffened instantly, head snapping toward the sound, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Cole's words died unfinished. Whatever had been set in motion wasn't done with them yet. The fair arrived like a decision the town had made together, without voting on it. Strings of lights were hung across Main Street, their soft yellow glow warming the wooden facades and the faces beneath them. Pumpkins lined the sidewalks, carved, painted, stacked into towers that leaned just enough to look playful. Music drifted from a small stage near the lake, fiddles and guitars coaxing cheer from the cooling air. Someone had decided that if fear was going to linger, it would have to stand quietly at the edges. Cole Mercer stood at the fringe of it all, hands in the pockets of his olive field jacket, watching people practice being normal. Children ran with sticky fingers and flushed cheeks. Couples shared apple cider like a secret. Laughter rose and fell, easy and bright, and for a moment it almost convinced him. Rook moved beside him, steady and composed, tactical harness snug against his black and tan coat. Someone had looped a ring of red and gold maple leaves over the dog's shoulders, an offering, not a command, and Rook had accepted it with the solemn dignity of a knight receiving ceremonial armor. A group of kids noticed and burst into laughter. "Look at him," one of them gasped. "He looks like a statue." Rook stood perfectly still, ears alert, eyes calm, as if he were guarding something far more important than a festival. His expression was unreadable, except perhaps for a faint look of patience, the kind a seasoned professional gives amateurs. Cole felt the corner of his mouth lift. It surprised him. The laugh didn't last long. It never did. It faded into a quiet ache, the kind that came when joy brushed past something bruised and kept going. He looked down at Rook, who flicked his eyes up briefly, as if checking on him. "You're enjoying this," Cole murmured. Rook blinked once, slow and dignified. They walked toward the food stalls, the scent of fried dough, cinnamon, and roasting nuts mixed with the sharpness of fallen leaves. Cole accepted a paper tray with a slice of apple pie from Maggie at the diner booth, who gave him a look that said she knew he needed sugar more than conversation. "You sticking around?" she asked lightly. "For tonight," Cole replied. "That's something," she said, and meant it. As they moved away, a woman stepped into Cole's path with careful intention. May Pike was smaller than he expected. Age had curved her spine just slightly, but not enough to hide the strength she'd once carried openly. Her hair was silver white, cut neatly at her chin, and her face bore fine lines that spoke less of vanity and more of endurance. She wore a wool coat the color of ash and held a cane not as support, but as punctuation. Her eyes were sharp, unafraid. "You're Cole Mercer," she said. Cole nodded. "Yes, ma'am." May glanced down at Rook, then back up. "You walk with the kind of quiet that comes from knowing what noise costs." Cole didn't answer. He had learned not to rush moments like this. "My son doesn't like you," May continued, her voice gentle but unyielding. "That usually means someone is asking the wrong questions." Cole felt the fair dim around them, sounds softening as if the night leaned closer to listen. "Calder believes in order," May said. "He believes silence keeps people safe." Her grip tightened on the cane. "I helped him believe that." Cole studied her face, searching for accusation. He found only fatigue. "Why tell me?" he asked. May looked toward the lake, where lights reflected in long, trembling lines. "Because silence is a habit, and habits become sins when they last too long." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded handkerchief. Inside was a small brass button, worn smooth at the edges. "It belonged to a boy once," she said. "I told myself it was kinder not to remember where it came from." Cole felt something shift inside his chest, subtle and dangerous. "You don't owe me anything." May met his gaze. "That's what we all told ourselves." She nodded once to Rook, respect, not affection, and stepped back into the crowd. Cole stood there long after she was gone, the fair moving around him like a river around stone. Night came fully, and with it, the cold sharpened. The fair wound down slowly, music thinning, laughter drifting into quieter conversations. Cole walked Rook back toward the edge of town, his thoughts tangled in May's words, in the weight of things said too late. His phone vibrated. Lila's name flashed on the screen. "Cole," she said, voice low. "I'm picking something up on thermal, near the ship." "How many?" Cole asked. "Hard to say. One figure, moving like they don't want to be seen." Avery's voice cut in on speaker, clipped and alert. "We're heading your way." Cole didn't look at Rook when he answered. He didn't need to. They moved. The forest at night was a different place. Familiar paths turned deceptive. Shadows deepened. Sound carried oddly. Leaves crunched underfoot, loud in the hush. Cole kept his pace measured, senses open. As they approached the hazard zone perimeter, Rook slowed, posture changing. The festive leaves still rested on his harness, absurd and out of place against the tension coiling through him. Cole knelt and removed them gently. "Work time," he whispered. Rook was already ahead of him. They reached the ship from the leeward side, where the wind died and the air felt thick. Lila crouched behind a fallen log, tablet glowing faintly in her hands. Avery knelt beside her, one hand resting near her radio, the other steadying herself against the damp earth. "There," Lila whispered, pointing. A silhouette moved near the hull, slow, deliberate, aware of blind spots. Whoever it was knew the terrain. Cole gestured for Avery to hold back. He moved forward with Rook at his side, steps silent. Inside the ship's outer chamber, something changed. The air felt colder. Still. A photograph lay propped against a rusted beam, illuminated by a small, concealed light. Cole froze. It was him. Taken on his first day in town, stepping out of his truck. The angle was precise, intimate, not a threat, an invitation. Rook circled once, nose low, then stopped abruptly. He lifted his head, ears swiveling, not toward the photo, but toward the darkness beyond it. Then came the sound. Not the hum. A voice, crackling through an old speaker, distorted but unmistakable. A man's voice, steady and familiar, stripped of warmth by age and interference. "Maintain position. Do not engage. We leave no trace." Cole's breath left him in a rush. The words had been burned into him years ago, delivered in a briefing room half a world away. The cadence, the authority, his former commanding officer. dead, according to the file. Avery stepped up behind him, eyes flicking between the photo and Cole's rigid posture. "That voice," she said quietly. "You recognize it?" Cole didn't turn. His jaw clenched, muscles tightening as if bracing for impact that had already come. "Yes," he said. Avery searched his face, reading the silence that followed like a confession written in invisible ink. "Were you part of this?" she asked softly. Cole closed his eyes. He didn't answer. And in that moment, the quiet between them was louder than the fair had ever been. The fire began as a rumor, a thin gray thread rising above the tree line, easy to dismiss if you wanted the day to stay ordinary. But rumors grew teeth when the wind shifted, and by late afternoon the sky over the lake had dimmed into a bruised orange. Ash drifted down like tired snow. Cole Mercer smelled it before he saw it. Smoke had a language. This one spoke of dry brush, resin-heavy pine, and heat that moved faster uphill than people ever expected. He stood on the porch of the ranger station, eyes narrowed, jaw set. Rook already pacing at his side. The radio crackled. "Small wildfire reported east of the hazard zone. Wind changing, visibility dropping." Avery Dunn stepped out beside him, pulling her jacket tight. Her face was sharp with calculation, the humor stripped away. "If the wind keeps pushing like that, it'll funnel straight toward the ship." Cole didn't answer. He was already looking past the smoke, past the fire lines, toward the place everyone had agreed not to go. Another voice cut in over the radio, higher, panicked. "Group of teenagers missing. Last seen hiking near the restricted perimeter." Cole closed his eyes for half a second. Rook stopped pacing. He stood still, ears forward, body taut, not anxious, not excited, ready. Sheriff Hank Barlow's truck skidded into the lot moments later. He climbed out, face flushed, uniform already streaked with ash. His voice carried authority sharpened by fear. "No one enters the hazard zone," Hank barked. "I want all units staged here. Fire crews are on the way." Avery stepped forward. "They're near the ship." Hank's mouth tightened. "That area is unstable. Metal debris, sinkholes, unknown contaminants. If someone dies in there, we lose the town," Avery finished for him. "I know." Hank's eyes flicked to Cole, then to Rook. "This isn't your call." Cole spoke quietly. "There are kids out there." Hank snapped, "And there will be funerals if this turns into a rescue fantasy." The wind gusted hard, sending smoke rolling across the lot. Somewhere in the distance, a tree cracked like a gunshot. Cole thought of the photograph in the ship, of the voice that had told him to leave no trace, of the boy in the old file, sealed away because silence had been easier. He thought of Milo. He stepped past Hank. "Cole," Avery said softly. "I'm not doing this to be brave," Cole replied. "I'm doing it because I know what it costs to walk away." Hank grabbed his arm. Cole didn't shake him off. He simply met the sheriff's eyes. "You're right," Cole said. "This is wrong by the book." Then he looked down at Rook, who had shifted closer, shoulder brushing Cole's leg, steady, grounding. "But it's right by the people who won't survive waiting." Hank let go. 30 minutes, he said hoarsely. "That's all you get." Cole nodded once and ran. The forest had changed. Smoke hung low, turning, sunlight into a dull copper haze. Needles crunched underfoot, and the air burned the lungs with every breath. Rook moved ahead of Cole, confident and precise, weaving through thickening brush with practiced efficiency. They reached the ship as flames licked at the far slope, fire crawling like a living thing. Voices echoed faintly, panicked, overlapping. "Over here. We can't see." Avery dropped beside Cole near the hull, coughing. "They're inside." Cole glanced at the ship's angled opening, the moss now dusted with ash. The structure groaned softly as heat expanded metal against itself. Rook froze, not in fear, but in assessment. His ears twitched. His paws shifted. He let out a single, sharp bark. Cole reacted instantly, yanking Avery back just as a rusted panel tore loose from above and crashed down where she'd been standing. "Good dog," Avery breathed. Rook was already moving again. Inside the outer chamber, the air was thick and dark. Smoke curled through broken corridors, turning the ship into a lung-inhaling disaster. Cole counted heads quickly. 4 teenagers, faces smeared with soot, eyes wide. "Stay together," Cole ordered. "Follow the dog." Rook led them deeper, choosing paths that angled away from heat and collapse. At one junction, the floor vibrated, metal whining under strain. Rook stopped, barked once, low, controlled. Cole caught the warning and steered the group left just as the floor behind them buckled inward, collapsing into darkness. They found temporary shelter in a smaller compartment, sealed enough to keep the worst of the smoke out. Avery slammed the door shut and slumped against the wall, chest heaving. For a moment, all that existed was breath. Rook sat, alert but calm, eyes never leaving the doorway. Lila's voice crackled through Avery's radio, distorted but present. "Thermal readings show a pocket of lower heat where you are. You're safe for now." Cole nodded, though she couldn't see him. As the teenagers calmed, one of them, a tall girl with ash-blonde hair and a defiant set to her jaw, looked around the compartment. Her name was Jenna, 17, a leader by instinct, if not intention. "What is this place?" she asked. Cole hesitated. A mistake that didn't stay buried. While Avery checked the teens for injuries, Rook rose and moved to the far wall. He sniffed along a seam, then pressed his shoulder against it. The panel slid open. Behind it was a narrow cavity shielded from heat. Inside lay a weatherproof case. Avery stared. "You've got to be kidding me." Cole opened it carefully. Documents, maps, old military markings, and a set of analog tapes, their labels faded but legible. Lila's voice came in sharp. "Cole, those tapes, if they're what I think they are, they're originals." "Originals of what?" Avery asked. "Of the missing child case," Lila said. "The one that was closed too fast." Cole felt the weight of it settle in his hands. Truth preserved. As if sensing the shift, Rook lifted his head and looked directly at Cole. Not alert, not tense, but intent. The dog stepped closer and placed one paw on Cole's knee, grounding him in the moment. Outside the compartment, something moved. Footsteps. Deliberate and human, retreating into the smoke. Whoever had hidden the truth here had been close enough to watch them almost die retrieving it. The fire crews arrived 20 minutes later, carving a path through smoke and flame. The teenagers were led out, shaken but alive, wrapped in blankets and gratitude. Milo stood among them, clutching his jacket, eyes fixed on Cole. Cole knelt in front of him. "You okay?" Milo nodded. "I was scared." "So was I," Cole admitted. As Milo was ushered away, Avery pulled Cole aside, lowering her voice. Her face was streaked with ash, eyes fierce. "You know what this means," she said, nodding toward the case. "You could end Calder. The sheriff, too. Tonight." Cole watched the town lights flicker through the smoke beyond the trees. He imagined headlines, trials, families torn open. He imagined Milo's face plastered across screens, reduced to a symbol. "And you think that's wrong?" he asked. "I think it's complicated," Avery said. "If you dump this now, the town will tear itself apart, and whoever's still pulling strings will disappear. Or worse, pick a new target. Cole looked at Rook, who sat nearby, soot darkening his fur, eyes steady. He turned back to Avery. "And if I wait?" Avery swallowed. "You protect the boy. You control the truth. For now." Cole's jaw clenched. He looked once more at Milo, small and wrapped in a blanket too big for him. "If I release this," Cole said quietly, "that kid will carry the fallout." He paused. "If I don't, the lie lives longer." Rook shifted closer, pressing his side against Cole's leg, solid and present. Cole's voice broke the silence, unfinished and heavy. "If I make this public, the boy will—" The sentence ended there. The night the truth began to move, the sky did something rare. A curtain of pale green light unfurled over the northern horizon, slow and deliberate, like a thought taking its time to become spoken. The aurora shimmered above the lake, its reflection trembling across dark water. People stepped out of their houses and stood on porches in borrowed silence. United by wonder, they didn't have to explain. Cole Mercer watched it from the edge of the trees, the cold biting through his jacket. Rook pressed against his leg like an anchor. The fire scars still smoldered faintly in the distance, and the smell of ash lingered, reminding him that beauty didn't erase consequence, it simply arrived anyway. Behind him, boots crunched softly. Deputy Nora Pike stopped a careful distance away, her posture rigid with decision. She looked smaller without the badge's authority to hide behind. Her dark hair braided tight as always, eyes ringed with sleepless resolve. In her hands was a slim folder, edges worn from being opened and closed too many times without permission. "I can't pretend anymore," she said. Cole didn't turn. "You don't have to explain." Nora exhaled, shoulders lowering just enough to show how long she'd been holding herself together. "I grew up believing order mattered more than truth. That if the town stayed standing, the cost was worth it." She swallowed. "But I've seen the files. I know who leaned on whom. I know how fast the case was buried." She held out the folder. "These are internal memos. Budget pressure, liability threats, names that shouldn't be connected, but are." Cole took the folder, feeling the weight of it. Paper and consequence. "You'll lose your badge," he said. Nora nodded. "Maybe, but I'll keep my name." She glanced down at Rook, who studied her quietly, then looked away as if satisfied. Nora's mouth curved into a fragile smile. "Your dog doesn't judge," she said. "He does," Cole replied. "He just doesn't lie about it." Nora laughed once, short and breathless, then stepped back into the darkness, leaving the choice with him. May Pike waited at the old boathouse, leaning on her cane, the aurora painting her silver hair with borrowed color. She looked tired, but unburdened in a way Cole hadn't seen before, like someone who had finally set something heavy down. Calder Pike arrived last. He moved with the same controlled confidence, coat immaculate, face composed. But there was tension in the way his jaw worked, the way his eyes kept flicking toward the lights in the sky, as if expecting judgment to descend from them. "Mother," Calder said evenly. May didn't rise. "Son?" Cole stayed back, an observer to a reckoning he didn't own. May's voice was calm. "I told myself silence was kindness. I told myself we were protecting people." Her fingers tightened on the cane. What we protected was comfort. And comfort rots when it's fed lies. Calder's smile faltered. "You don't understand the pressures." "I understand fear," May interrupted. "I lived with it. And I taught it to you." She reached into her coat and placed the brass button on the table between them. "This is what silence looks like after 23 years. Calder stared at it. For the first time, his certainty cracked. Not shattered, cracked. You would destroy the town, he said quietly. May met his eyes. No, I would let it heal. Calder looked to Cole, something like accusation in his gaze. And you? You think confession absolves you? Cole stepped forward then, the aurora reflecting in his eyes. No, he said. I think confession stops the bleeding. Calder said nothing more. He didn't need to. The silence had finally turned against him. Later, deeper in the woods, Rook stopped. The aurora pulsed faintly overhead, its glow filtering through branches like a benediction. Rook lowered his head, sniffed, then changed direction sharply, pulling Cole off the path toward a stand of young pines. This isn't on the map, Cole murmured. Rook didn't care about maps. He led Cole to a shallow rise where the ground dipped unnaturally, moss disturbed in a way time hadn't earned. Rook circled once, then began to dig. Not frantically, but with purpose, each motion economical. Cole knelt and helped, hands cold, breath fogging. They uncovered a small, sealed container, weathered, but intact. Inside were copies of the truth. Photographs, handwritten notes, a child's drawing folded until the paper softened. The missing pieces, hidden not to preserve them, but to keep them from speaking. Cole closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered, to the boy he'd never met, to the man he used to be. Rook pressed his shoulder into Cole's chest, steadying him. This wasn't command. It was ceremony. They returned the container to the earth, this time marked, this time remembered. As Cole stood, something tugged at his attention. Not fear, not sound, but alignment. Rook lifted his head and stared toward the lake, ears angled just so. Cole followed his gaze. The aurora shifted, a brighter band forming, and for a heartbeat, the compass in Cole's hand, one he'd carried since deployment, twitched. Not wildly, purposefully. At Lila's cabin, equipment hummed softly, screens glowing with data that refused to stay quiet. Lila Hart stood barefoot on the wooden floor, hair loose, glasses abandoned somewhere behind her. She looked exhilarated and afraid in equal measure, the face of someone staring at a pattern too elegant to ignore. It's not just the ship, she said when Cole entered. The magnetic anomalies, the infrasound signatures, they align along a corridor. She pulled up a map. Points flickered to life. Not dozens, not hundreds. Enough. Avery leaned over her shoulder, soot still faint on her jacket. You're saying this was planned? I'm saying it's a system, Lila replied. Test sites, monitoring nodes, whatever they were doing, it wasn't singular. Cole felt the old instincts stir, not panic, but readiness. A small device on the table chirped. The transmitter. Lights blinked in a sequence that no one had activated. Coordinates appeared on the screen, steady and unmistakable. Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. It's responding. Avery looked at Cole. To what? Before he could answer, Rook padded over and sat, gaze fixed on the display. He tilted his head once, listening. Lila swallowed. It's not just one, she said. It never was. By morning, the town would wake to truth. Files would surface, names would be spoken. The quiet would break, not into chaos, but into conversation long delayed. Cole stood outside with Rook as dawn crept in. The aurora fading like a dream that had done its work. He rested his hand on the dog's neck, feeling the steady thrum of life beneath fur and harness. You're my instinct, Cole said softly. My better one. Rook leaned into him, then glanced pointedly at the kitchen window, where a slice of apple pie waited on the sill. Payment promised and not yet delivered. Cole huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah, I know. He looked back toward the trees, toward the coordinates glowing in his mind, toward the knock he could feel rather than hear. Farther now, deeper, waiting. The truth hadn't ended anything. It had opened a door. Sometimes the miracle doesn't come as thunder or fire from the sky. Sometimes it comes quietly, through a warning we almost ignore, a voice we choose to hear, or an instinct placed in our path at the right moment. In this story, the truth was never meant to destroy. It was meant to release what had been buried too long. Maybe God doesn't always remove the darkness right away. Maybe He places a light inside us instead, and waits to see if we will carry it forward. Into the forest, into the fire, into the moments when doing the right thing costs more than staying silent. In everyday life, we all face smaller versions of the same choice. To speak or to stay quiet. To help or to pass by. To trust that doing good still matters, even when no one is watching. If this story touched something in you, take a moment to reflect on where you are being called to act with courage today. And if you believe stories like this matter, please share this video with someone who might need it. Leave a comment below and tell us what this story meant to you. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue telling stories of loyalty, faith, and the unseen bonds between humans and animals. May God bless you, protect you, and guide your steps. May He give you peace where you are tired, courage where you are afraid, and light where the path feels unclear. Thank you for walking this story with us.